back to the Morning Roast with Bonte and Shasky.
Spadoni, let you come in here. Give me the three eyes. Give me the three eyes right now.
Oh, the three Kurt Angle eyes? Oh, you got your intensity, integrity, and intelligence. Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
You know when I saw that displayed? Friday night from Kyle Shanahan. The three eyes. I saw it all from the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Maybe damn proud to be a Niner fan. The three eyes. You see it in Purdy. You see it in Shanahan. You saw it in John Lynch. Fuck up, boys and girls. It's going to be a fun ride. Trey Lance gone. 4th round pick. We barely know him. Trey Lance era really didn't start, but it certainly ended Friday. I woke up from a nap. I was like, oh, it's on and popping. Trey Lance is now in Dallas, where he's going to be the third-string quarterback and probably not get as many reps as he did in San Francisco. Hell, he barely got reps out here. So he's gone, just like that. 888-957-9570. We'll get to the calls in just a second, but let's go to Matty B, Matt Barrows from The Athletic. Well, that's an article that was posted 5 hours ago. One lesson from the 49ers Trey Lance saga. 2021 was a bad year to gamble on a quarterback, and we'll get into that right now with Matt Barrows as he rejoins the Morning Roast here on 95.7 Game with Joe Shasky, the Butcher, and Bonte Hill. Matty B, good morning. One lesson from 49ers Trey Lance saga. 2021 was a bad year to gamble on a quarterback. Now, for the readers or for the people who haven't read this article yet, I did. It was posted 5 hours ago. What was that one lesson, Matt?
Well, I mean, it's very easy to forget. It's only 2 years ago, but that was the COVID off season where everything was canceled, basically. No combine, no pre-draft visits, no sit-down dinners with prospects. So the result was that teams got less of a look at prospects than they would have in a normal year. So it just sort of magnifies all the risks that the 49ers were already taking with a smaller school guy who didn't play a lot in college. Oh, and you don't ever get to see him run a 40. Smaller school means that the sort of the GPS data that they rely on for speed and things like that, not nearly as prevalent in that conference as it is at Alabama or Michigan or one of the big schools. So obviously this is all in the realm of hindsight being 2020, but I think it's necessary to kind of look back and see how that process went and to kind of note where the mistakes occurred.
What was the bigger miscalculation? The prospect that they chose or the situation that they had in place for any player?
Any player coming in to that situation? Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. It only works if everything goes, perfectly, according to plan. And on paper, it was a good plan, but all it took was one, throw in which Lance's hand went into the helmet of a Raiders player in a preseason game to sort of throw that plan amok. And that's exactly what happened. And that was just the first bad thing that went wrong. It was a series of unfortunate events that kind of left Trey Lance going into year 3,
right,
basically where he was going into year 1.
Yeah.
And the 49ers knew that he wasn't going to get the reps, or at least ideally, because there are 2 guys ahead of him. Now, those 2 guys could have gotten hurt as well. But it didn't look as if he was going to get the reps that he still needs. He still needed with this team, which prompted the trade to Dallas.
Yeah, so when it comes to the quarterback battle, the backup job, which went to Sam Darnold Wednesday, Shanahan cited that, hey, 10 days before that, we kind of knew that Sam Darnold had locked up the backup job. What do you see from training camp? Was Darnold always a number 2 going back to OTAs the minute he signed with the 49ers? How did you see that race playing or that competition playing out in your eyes, Matt?
Yeah, you know what? I saw Lance leading. I mean, it was never a blowout. In my mind, never a blowout in either direction, either towards Lance or towards Darnold. I actually thought that Lance was doing a little bit better to begin training camp. And I don't know when Darnold took over for the viewing public. I thought that the Raiders game was stark. One guy got off to a really slow start. The other guy hit a 37-yarder with his first official pass. So, that's 10. That was the 10-day period that Shanahan was talking about. He later said he was just using 10 days in a more general sense. There wasn't one marker there that kind of showed when Darnold took over. To me, and I'm reading the tea leaves and I'm trying to interpret what everyone's saying. Darnold is a very good thrower. They talk about his arm talent, this and that. We've seen bits and pieces of it in the preseason. Lance has made big strides from where he had been after that finger injury, but it was still every now and then a bit precarious. And when things broke down, so did the mechanics as well. He sort of reverted to where he was. And I just think it was something where the 49ers realized that, it would be much easier to count on Darnold than it would on a guy who's still sort of working through all of these issues. They didn't want to have a project, which Trey Lance still is,
right,
in that number 2 spot.
Man, there's so much to break down here. Brock Purdy, watching him in that drive the other day. I mean, he looks really good. He looks really, really, really good right now. Obviously, all the players are aligning behind him and everything. Why do you think, though, that we keep talking about quarterback room with this team? Because Monte was asking me that question. Why do we keep talking about the backups? I'm like, well, I mean, I just know for me as one of the fans, 5 of the last 6 years, they've used 3 or more quarterbacks. And so I think it's a fair, fear for a lot of 49er fans. But for the players, do they talk about the backup quarterback, or are they all in on Brock on and off the record?
Yeah, I think both. I mean, and this goes back to when he took over. I think that there was a very, very short period of panic when Jimmy Garoppolo went out of that Miami game. And the sort of the magic of Brock Purdy is that he came in and was so good so quickly that by, I don't know what quarter, by the third quarter, there was a sort of a reassurance on this team. Everybody kind of suspected this guy would be good. And when they started seeing it, and when they saw the offense go unchanged, I mean, you went from a really experienced guy to Mr. Irrelevant in the blink of an eye, and the offense never changed in that game. So I think there's been a confidence in him for a while. I know that the defensive players really liked him last year because he was running the scout team, and he was running the scout team with an attitude. He was really aggressive with that job, giving the defense really good looks. Guys like Jimmy Ward, been there for a long time. Fred Warner really respected that. And so he had sort of already started to kind of gain their admiration in that role. And then obviously when he came in and won all those games, it only grew from there. So, I think that there is a confidence with him. I think that the question mark, and you just alluded to it, is that he's not a big guy. And he did have a couple of injuries last year. Very easily could have missed that game in Seattle where they won the division because of a rib injury and then, of course, the elbow later on. So 17 games, I think the 49ers would be very lucky to have one quarterback start each of those games.
No doubt. Matty B, looking back in 2021 for one last time with Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, and we saw Kyle Shanahan alternating quarterbacks in that last preseason game against the Raiders. Heck, Trey Lance threw the first touchdown pass of the season in Detroit to Trent Sherfield. I remember Mark Sanchez being on the broadcast saying, boy, if I'm Jimmy, I am not happy about that. That locker room during that season, how did they feel about the possibility of Trey Lance maybe starting football games as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo, who had been there with them through the grind in 2017. 2018 he gets hurt. 2019 we know it ends in Miami in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. How would that locker room react? How would they have reacted to Trey Lance possibly starting that season in 2021? Because I think that could have been a breaking point for that locker room.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't the plan. I think you're right. Trey Lance comes in there with not a lot of experience. I don't think that they ever thought that was going to happen. But that game where Trey Lance gets hurt, that Raiders game, the last preseason game of the season, that was the one where they were sort of using those two quarterbacks alternately.
Right.
And the Raiders didn't know what was happening. It's a preseason game, so Las Vegas didn't prepare for it, and it was backups and whatnot. But you could see the logic in it, just the sort of the blitzkrieg that the 49ers would be able to bring. And Jimmy Garoppolo was doing some running in that game too. So it really kind of kept defenses on their heels. But then the finger injury occurs, and from my understanding, and that was a question in my mind too. If this finger was so bad, then how did Lance come in week one,
right,
and look good on that drive, right, and throw a touchdown pass? And
the Arizona game, Matt. The Arizona game that year. Arizona starting in that game. Then there was murmurs that if Jimmy didn't play well in Chicago that year, that Trey Lance may have started in that season later on in the back half of 2021.
Right. Yeah, but I think it was a case of the finger getting worse, or there was the finger and then the knee, but the finger seemed to get worse before it got better towards the end of the season, which meant that he had to readjust his whole throwing motion just to get the ball out of his hand and down the field. And so I think there was much more hesitance to put him into games in that fashion. The excuse back then was that Shanahan had second thoughts about asking the offense to operate one way and then quickly move to a different way, but that certainly didn't seem to be an issue as they were moving into the season. In fact, it seemed like it was going to be pretty unstoppable.
No doubt. This story that you wrote this morning is fascinating nuggets here. Scott McCloughan, Randy Miller talking about GMs and how they have taken Trey Lance. They both say, no, there's too many unknowns there. And the fact they didn't see Trey Lance run at 40, a huge miscalculation, but the Niners pivot. They trade him to Dallas Friday night before that preseason game against the L.A. Chargers. Almost forgot who they played. I'm the Pittsburgh, Matt. I'm the Pittsburgh. Get ready for Pittsburgh week one. Oh, real quick before we let you go. Nick Bosa, will he be signed by the Niners before week one? What's your gut telling you?
These next couple of days, Tuesday is cut down day, and signing him to this deal would help the 49ers in a big way, because they're right up against the cap, and signing Bosa means that they could actually carve out a little bit more space this year, and they'd also know what they're up against next year as well. So. It very well could be that the agent is using Tuesday at 1 p.m. That's the deadline for getting down to 53-man roster as leverage. So, I mean, that's sort of the next data point or date that I'd be looking at for when this deal could get done.
All right, tell Shasky not to worry about Bosa. He'll be in Pittsburgh. Come on. Shasky's worried over here, Matt.
Yeah, I would worry about Bosa for sure.
All right, Matt. Take care. Good story in The Athletic. Thanks for coming
Matt.
out with us.
All right, anytime, guys. Talk to you soon.
All right, Matty B, Matt Barrows here on 95.7 The Game from The Athletic. Some great nuggets in this story. Check it out at The Athletic.